What's up, guys? Welcome to the Mason Pot family. How long does your infusion last, and what is the best way to store your homemade cannabis infusions? If it's your first time tapping in, please subscribe, like, and turn those notifications on because we're dropping cool content all the time. Let's start off with how long will your infusion last? While there's varying opinions of this on the internet, the way I like to look at it is how long does whatever you're using last? So if we look at this Kerrygold butter here, best by May 18th, 2025. So if I infuse this with cannabis, I would feel comfortable using it up until that date if I have it stored correctly in the refrigerator or freezer. Now let's look at this olive oil. What's the date on here if I can find it? Oh, December 12th, 2025. So this obviously has a longer shelf life. So I'd feel comfortable having a cannabis infusion in here if I did have it refrigerated or frozen. Again, if it was sitting on the counter, I would be a little more cautious about it. So that's how I like to look at, the infusion medium. Now, if you're making like edibles, that's a little different story, especially if they're baked goods. Like if you're making cookies or brownies, there's egg in there. So however long the cookies or brownies would last is how long your edibles will last. So that's the way I like to look at it in general. Just making sure you have that proper storage. Now, here's an example of how I like to store my infusions, and I like to label them like this. We're actually going to be coming out with some cool little magnets for you guys so you can label your Mason pot really easily. But this is and I usually finish my stuff off. This is a little longer than I'd have it typically. Gelato coconut oil, 7/19/24. I guess that's not too long ago. This is, I did a half ounce, I think about 24% potency, which gave us like 3,360 possible total milligrams. So this shit's really potent, guys. This has 210 milligrams per tablespoon. And I keep this in a refrigerator. And you can use, a lot of people like using darker colored jars or amber jars. But that's the cool thing about the Mason pot sleeve is it helps keep that darkness in there, even when it's in the refrigerator. Or if it was out on the counter and you're leaving it there, UV light is known to degrade the cannabinoids in there too. And I feel like it's important to note too, if you did have something, like if you did have this infused for like a year, it's gonna have a good chance of losing potency over time. This happens in edibles, just on the recreational and medicinal market as well. THC can degrade over time, so keeping it in the refrigerator or freezer, keeping it in a dark, cool area is really the key. You want to make sure you're doing that consistently. If I was leaving this, if this was all infused and I was leaving it on the counter, I'd make sure to put it away into a cabinet that's kind of a little cooler and darker if possible. In the past, I've actually, when I had my garage, where I'd keep some infusions, I would actually put them out there sometimes in the winter. Nice kind of old school way to go about it. But typically I keep all mine in the refrigerator or freezer. Even this coconut oil I just took out. It's starting to, get a little hotter in here, but I keep everything like that. If I want to use it, if I want it to, melt down, I'll just take it out, let it sit on the counter for a little bit and do its thing in more of a liquid form there. So those are like the top ways I like to look at, how long will it last? What's the best way to store it? You can also vacuum seal stuff in the freezer. You can make your edibles, put them in the freezer. I think people like to overcomplicate, like, oh, how long is this gonna last? Great rule of thumb, guys, is how long would the product initially last? What's the expiration date? How long is that baked good? How long is that gummy gonna last? And the last thing I wanna point out here is in the cannabis market, at least in California, I know some states might be different. I think the hemp market's 2 years, but in California, you can only have a 1-year expiration date on your product. You can send it in to get retested, that same product, and get another year expiration, but there's only that year expiration, which makes it hard for some, suppliers if they're not selling enough, because I've had a lot of products that are like getting kicked out of dispensaries. I'll get them for free or really steep discount, and they still work. They still get you high as hell. Like the flower is not gonna expire, the gummies aren't necessarily gonna expire, but there are those rules in place to make sure things are moving like that. So that's another way you can look at it. Look at the expiration dates, store it correctly, nice, cool, dark area, especially the refrigerator or freezer. Use an amber jar or like a Mason pot here with the silicone sleeve to help keep that dark, and you're good to rock and roll, my friends.